Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Gan Hong Seng from Department of Data Science, Universiti Malaysia, Kelantan, and I am also the coordinator from the Malaysia Alumni of Sakura Science Association. Today I'm going to present my um, research project titled The Disturbance of COVID-19 Pandemic on Japan Research Mobility Programs, a survey from the Malaysian perspective. The international research mobility has fostered a vibrant scientific collaboration and encouraged active knowledge transfer and mature cultural understandings among the researchers around the globe. So this active research exchange has brought a lot of benefits in terms of technical expertise, networking, sharing of research resources, as well as some application of joint international grants among these researchers. And in Malaysia, due to the successful implementation of Look East policy introduced in 1980s, Japanese mobility programs have become very popular among the local researchers and students. So every year, a lot of Malaysian researchers and students will visit Japanese higher education institutes and universities. So these mobilities offered by JSPS or like other institutes such as the JST usually range from a week until several years. And these programs play critical roles in long-term talent cultivation and the scientific productivity development. However, after the COVID outbreak in early 2020, international travel has been prohibited by most countries in an attempt to minimize the risk of the COVID spread among these countries. So as a result, existing way of conducting the mobility program has hit a snag. The COVID-19 pandemic has implicitly transforming the traditional paradigm of cultural and research value exchange. So this is unprecedented, and the long-term disruption brought by the pandemic is profound. Despite the importance of Japanese mobility programs to the long-term scientific development in Malaysia, the disturbance on the research exchange occurred during and after the Japanese exchange program has never been investigated. As a result, in this study, the objectives are to explore the overseas experience by Malaysian researchers and students during their stays in Japan, and to analyze the research progress after they have returned to Malaysia, and lastly, to identify the impact of disruption on research progress experienced by Malaysian researchers and students after the pandemic outbreak. So existing studies on international mobility programs mainly concentrated on European countries. So for example, we have the Royal Society from the United Kingdom and the Mobility and Career Path of Researchers in Europe, or we call MORE. They have carried out surveys on the prospect of mobility programs on researchers. Like for example, in 2013, MORE2 survey investigated the usefulness of research mobility to careers, working conditions, and mobility patterns among 11,000 researchers from 27 European countries by using questionnaire as the medium of conduct. And 4 years later, in 2017, the Royal Society conducted a survey of international mobility of researchers, and they have highlighted that the mobility would contribute to better international networks, more research outputs, as well as a better career outcomes. However, most of the studies they focus on Western mobility programs. Japan has offered a lot of mobility programs to the ASEAN countries, especially those by JST and JSPS. So we would like to investigate the effect of the COVID-19 on these programs. And in this study, we will carry out a survey question among the Malaysian researchers and students. This questionnaire will consist of 27 questions within 4 sections as the experience of Japanese mobility programs, the pre-COVID-19 research progress after they have returned from the mobility program, and the disturbance to the research progress after the outbreak happened in 2020. And lastly, we will do a conclusion for this study. So we define the experience of the Japan mobility program with the aim to investigate the impression before and after the Malaysian students and researchers before and after they join the mobility program. The pre-COVID-19 research progress after the mobility program will investigate the continuation of research collaboration between Japanese and Malaysian researchers after the Malaysian researchers have returned back from the mobility. The disturbance to the research progress after the COVID-19 outbreak would investigate the disturbance in terms of knowledge and skill transfer, research networking and communication, and lastly, the scientific productivity as a result of these mobility programs. Then the conclusion would summarize this study. In this study, we use a Likert scale of 1, which indicate strongly disagree, to 5, which is strongly agree in this study. Our target respondents would be Malaysian researchers and students who have joined various kinds of Japan-related exchange programs, such as the JSPS fellowship programs, the Sakura Science Exchange, and the Japan Student Service Organization JASO exchange program. So these respondents should have joined this Japan-related mobility before the pandemic. We received a total of 93 completed questionnaire, and then we will use a multivariate test in order to examine the associations of components in this study. Specifically, we study the effect of the following components: the overseas experience, which is categorized as section 1 of 6 questions, knowledge and skill transfer, section 2 and 3 also consists of 6 questions, research networking and communication, section 2 and 3 also 6 questions, as well as the scientific productivity, section 2 and 3 6 questions is. And this is the parameter used in our study, which consists of the mobility before and after. So we would like to investigate the research impression before and after the Japanese mobility program, knowledge pre and post, which indicate the continuation of scientific knowledge and skill sharing after their return and before the COVID outbreak, and post is after the COVID outbreak, network pre and post, also before and after the COVID outbreak in terms of networking and communication, and productivity pre and post, which also indicating the continuation of scientific productivity before the COVID, and after the COVID, respectively. So the result shows that the respondent has indicated positive research impression towards their incoming Japanese mobility program. This is before they attended the Japanese research program. And similarly, they have positive research experience after they back from the program. We deduce this overall positive response shown by the Malaysian researchers and students as a result of conducive research environment in the Japanese university or institutes, helpful team members at the Japanese lab, and a fruitful research visit filled with schedule and also with a lot of discussion. So overall, the Malaysian researchers and students, they are very specified and they have positive impression towards the Japanese mobility. And specifically, 96.8% of the respondents indicated that they enjoy the Japanese mobility program. But for the research impact of the mobility program before the COVID outbreak, so in this context, we are investigating the continuation of research progress. It's receiving a mild positive responses. Continuous knowledge and skill sharing between Malaysian and Japanese researchers recorded a mean score of 3.974. Maintenance of the networking and communication, we have a mean score of 3.831. While the pursuit of the scientific productivity only recorded a mean score of 3.498. So we attributed this disturbance on the knowledge and skills sharing as well as the maintenance of the networking communication between Malaysian and Japanese researchers due to the COVID-19 pandemic has been apparent. The disturbance effect is due to the central role of this physical visit during the mobility program to carry out the physical discussion and also the cultivation of teamwork among the researchers from both sides. These are irreplaceable from the perspective of online platform. And the disruption on the scientific productivity, which has shown a result mean score of 3.731, is the lowest among these three components. Intuitively, the scientific productivity in the academia can be reflected from the perspective of research output, such as the joint publication and international grant proposal writing between Malaysian and Japanese researchers. This output can be continued at respective home country with the convenient use of information and communication technology such as the WebEx, the Google Meet, the Teams in order to carry out their meeting and discussion on the joint publication writing or the international grant proposal writing. So that's why the disturbance would be the lowest. So the conclusion for this study is this is the first survey to study the research experience of Malaysian researchers and students who have participated in Japan mobility program and then analyze the disturbance of COVID-19 pandemic on the long-term research progress. Our findings have suggested that apparent disturbance can be observed in the effective knowledge sharing and maintenance of networking. These are irreplaceable by online platforms. In future, more studies should have explored the mild positive responses on the continuation of research collaboration after the researchers return to Malaysia. We have to come out with strategy in order to boost the long-term scientific productivity as well. Before we end this presentation, we would like to acknowledge the financial aid provided by Toshiba International Foundation in supporting this study, as well as the voluntary help provided MASA during this study. So thank you everyone for listening to my presentation. Thank you.